So Jack, for the audience that was enjoying their loved ones, not staring at Twitter all day long, what happened? Did we experience MAGA Chernobyl?
Well, we experienced a MAGA dust-up, but MAGA Chernobyl is ridiculous. That sounds like something that some George Soros operative would want to put out into the ether to try to give the Democrats some glimmer of hope that this country is possibly interested in coming back towards them again. Newsflash. No, there was no MAGA Chernobyl, and no, the country is totally over all the wokerati and the wokeness that got us into the situation that we're currently in. But what happened was a probably a predictable and generally, I think, forthcoming argument and debate between members of, shall we say, the tech right and members of the MAGA base as pertains to the level of immigration, particularly we're talking about legal immigration now to the United States as pertains, interestingly enough, directly to the tech rights.
So a couple things. I need you to educate me on Saved by the Bell, because Blake, how old are you again?
I am 34 years old, Charlie.
Okay. And Jack, you're like 36, right?
80,000.
You're 80,000 years old?
Yes, I am. I believe it or not.
Do you not share your age? Is this some sort of woman thing? I'm like actually curious.
Jack?
Oh, no, I'm 40.
Okay. You're 40. Tyler's right on the...
I'm on the bubble. I'm younger than Jack.
This is not some sort of trick. I'm just saying I'm 31. So the Saved by the Bell thing...
You missed it.
And you guys were kind of teasing me. It's legitimately wasn't my thing. So I need you to educate me on it. But let me just first just say to
teen comedy.
No, it's great. No, I'm not even criticizing it because we had our own stuff. We had Full House, right? We had... I don't know if Full House was as much in your guys' demo, but we had Full House. We had Even Stevens, right? We had That's So Raven.
Even Stevens is your...
So that was my like strike zone.
Beans.
But what I think Vivek was trying to say, which if I was advising him, I would have not sent that tweet. And Jack, this is where I want you to go into explaining Saved by the Bell, is that it could be read, and I don't think he meant it this way, as he was crapping on people's beloved culture and country, especially the Gen X generation that wants America to get back to that reference point. Is that fair to say, Jack? Because the Gen X kind of the roar was the undercurrent of MAGA.
Yeah.
Gen X was the most pro-MAGA demographic this election cycle. And they look at that America as like, no, that's actually what we want to get back to. Don't crap on that. Jack, respond to that and also explain what is Saved by the Bell and the cultural significance.
Yeah, you're generally accurate. So I think Vivek, JD, and myself are all pretty much like within a couple of months of each other. So this is actually that really sweet spot of like late 80s, early 90s. So it's technically like most Gen Xers probably didn't watch Saved by the Bell because it would have been considered too young for them. But also, older than yourself. And it really is that sweet spot. I call it centennials. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. But essentially what you're saying, Charlie, is correct, is that it is not just the, and by the way, Mario Lopez, of course, is still, pretty much a mainstay of daytime TV. Somehow he still looks the exact same age. We all got to find his doctor, right? And there is an aesthetic element here as well, because it's not quite the 1980s. So Gen X would be more like John Hughes, which is something that got referenced earlier on War Room today by Gavin Wax. And by the way, John Hughes movies from the 16 Candles, like The Breakfast Club, like these were all Home Alone. These are all movies that myself, guys like Still Boneless and others were making memes of in 2024 to describe the America that we were trying to return to. And so Saved by the Bell, it definitely kind of fits in that canon because it's America before it became whatever we are now. And so attacking this, not only did it shift I think the current of the argument, but it just really hit on a nerve for a lot of people who are like, wait a minute, this was a beloved TV show. And Screech was the comedic relief, or the Stephen Urkel character in Family Matters, another thing Vivek mentioned. but nobody hated Screech, right? Nobody he was always portrayed as a character that like was a member of the Friends, and even though he was kind of always getting into trouble, that people would always treat him with respect, and a lot of the episodes were like, hey, how do we help Screech out of a jam kind of thing. There was never like a this is the guy we pick on and hate. It was never like that at all. And I don't really think there were any of that, those types of things in the 90s, even in the 80s with John Hughes movies. So there's this whole undercurrent of MAGA is like turning America back into this. And it felt like that was what was getting attacked.
Well, and the history here too is like, I mean, there's so much sacred here in Saved by the Bell, because you encapsulate it correctly, which is like it's tail end Gen X, older millennials. So the oldest millennials were the early 80s born millennials. Those are the ones that guarded Saved by the Bell like it's their life. All of us really throughout our entire lives throughout high school modeled our lives basically after Saved by the Bell.
Is that right? It was that big of a deal?
Oh, that big of a deal. And our first grade, and we were saying in the chat,
huge.
What's the premise of the movie? Well, of the movie, the TV show?
It's slapstick. It actually started as a show called Good Morning Miss Bliss, which started early in like junior high. So you actually followed the character Zach as he kind of built this friend group throughout high school, and it was the entire element of his entire high school. So you actually have an entire fake built high school culture that's an America, like a centered American 90s high school culture that basically for over a decade every American modeled themselves after. Your first crush, it wasn't Jennifer Aniston in Friends, it was Kelly Kapowski in Saved by the Bell.
Yep.
Your friend that you
Kelly
knew,
Kapowski, let's go.
And by the way, Tiffany Amber Thiessen, who has actually connection to Arizona, great person, great family. They're trying to like raise their family the right way. Great example. But you have Zach, who's the guy, and then you have the jock, and then you have Screech, rest in peace, who's now dead. Which, by the way, is also an element of this. Is like, how dare you incite the name of Screech, who's dead? But everybody basically modeled their friend group. Friend groups, I would argue, in America became friend groups modeled after Saved by the Bell.
That's again. I'm just keep on educating me, guys. So, what would be the cultural ethos? And Jack, let's connect to the H-1B debate. What did Vivek say? Again, Vivek is a dear friend. I'm dialoguing with him right now as I'm doing this, kind of giving him and you guys know that I've been giving him fair and honest feedback on this, and he's great. What did Vivek say in his tweet about Saved by the Bell, and why do you think that was a miscategorization? Blake, Jack, whomever.
I think it was a miscategorization big time.
No, what did he say first? Please start with what he said.
So he said that, and well, I'm prefacing that to explain what he said is that he essentially was saying that we idolize or emulate the two main characters are Slater and Zach, and Zach is sort of like the preppy the preppy collared shirt, pop collar, cool kid, whereas AC Slater is your typical athletic jock and he's on the wrestling team, etc. Whereas Screech is your geek. I mean, these are all archetypes, and the John Hughes Breakfast Club kind of plays into that as well. And then but what Vivek was saying was that essentially he didn't view this as a play on just a group of friends and, hey, these are a bunch of different identities. He was saying that we are venerating, the jock and the preppy cool kid over the sort of nerdy, geeky character of Screech. And I mean, I've never viewed Saved by the Bell that way, to be honest. I don't know that we, and on the above hand, he says here, a culture that celebrates the prom queen over the math Olympiad champ or the jock over the valedictorian will not produce the best engineers. And so, I mean, I could go on about this, but I would also say that, that really is American culture in a lot of ways.
Well, so, you know who I think is perfect? Let me just get to the nerd here. So, Blake, what do you make of this? Because, Blake, you're the smartest person. That's why I had to interject.
I was going to be nice about it.
Yeah, no. Blake knows I introduced him as the smartest person I know. He went to Dartmouth. No, seriously. I mean, but, like, what do you make of this? Because do you err on the side that, we should... the spelling bee champion should get Pamela Anderson? Or I mean, where do you stay on on this whole conversation?
So first of all, I have to say I can't say too much about Saved by the Bell. I'm in that perfect age range where I remember Saved by the Bell as it aired after Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, which is what I was watching when I was 4 years old, of course.
Wait, you saw Saved by the Bell, the new class. That's a totally different thing.
No, the new class is totally. It did also have Screech though. Screech
yeah, it
State,
did, but like you're talking about something
like
totally different. But that's fine. Sorry, I didn't.
I guess I don't remember. I just remember the voice that was like Saved by the Bell. I can't remember how it went, but it went like that.
No, you want us to sing you the whole entire theme song? Jack and I could probably sing the whole thing.
No, I don't.
I could do the
I've
wake
heard
up in
you
the
guys
morning. When you wake up in the morning and you.
But culturally, I think what really stood out, the reason that this went and it got, we're currently at 73 million views on this tweet from Vivek. I think what stood out to people is it was the fact that it was so locked into this 90s cultural thing. And I think what people picked up from it, it was almost this sense of, honestly, the word that comes to mind is resentment, that there are people who are essentially, they're like angry that they weren't more popular in high school or something. And it's America's job writ large to be punished for this. And also this tone of like, you watched Saved by the Bell or your parents watched Saved by the Bell 30 years ago. And as a result, America needs to have more H-1B workers who will fill this or that job. And if you pause and think about that, that is completely insane and doesn't make any sense, but it's a type that you run into. You can see accounts like this, like where people will just overtly say, basically, we need to have more immigration because I am bitter and resentful towards you. There was this book that got profiled a few years ago in NPR. It was called This Land is Our Land, an Immigrant's Manifesto. And the author was an NYU journalism professor named Suketu Mehta. And he basically said, we need lots of immigration to America because the British colonized India. And basically, like, I'm angry about that. And this is a form of reparations. If you scratch at it, you can very easily run into this almost resentful attitude at ordinary Americans. And I think that is really what set people off with what Vivek was saying. It's that you could pick up this thing of like, yeah, like basically, why didn't we, venerate people like me more when I was in high school? And that's a problem. And as part of it, he's also just indulging these weird myths because in real life, the jock versus nerd thing is not, Jack and I talked about this. The jock versus nerd thing is not really that real. I believe jocks on average actually, like high school athletes, get better grades than other people do in college.
Well, and that's actually
college athletes get better grades than other kids in college.
So there's actually a plot line in Saved by the Bell that where the Zach Morris, who's essentially the main character of it, I think it's like towards the end of the run because it's a senior year in high school, and he takes the SATs, and it's portrayed as kind of comedic, but he ends up getting like a 1,500 on the SATs without even studying for it. So it's like, no, it actually does show things that can happen, and he like gets accepted to Yale and all this stuff. And it turns out that no, as a matter of fact, there is high achievement, and that's not necessarily tied towards performing the specific set of ways. Like, it's not an Excel spreadsheet that you can be talented and you can be smart and also play sports, or like you could play lacrosse, or you could be track and field, you could play baseball, whatever. That doesn't, like, one doesn't negate the other. And this is kind of a strange sort of like very Hollywood imposed kind of identity archetype that we do then seek to use throughout society, but real life doesn't always match up with that.
But now just to steel man Vivek's argument, for the record, I'm very much against H-1Bs, and I think this tweet could have been worded differently. But don't we see some truth in what Vivek was saying? And I'll start with Blake, that there has been this slow motion decline into mediocrity, that there has been this acceptance that we're no longer going to pursue excellence, that we're no longer going to be the best at things anymore. Is there? Would you agree there's some truth in that in the larger theme of what Vivek was trying to touch on here.
Absolutely. I definitely think it's a big problem. And as conservatives, we've noted this over and over. Like a lot of liberalism is trying to convince people to accept failure and mediocrity. Oh, our cities are just supposed to not be well run. But what I will note is a lot of that is downstream of the same ideology that gives us massive amounts of immigration, which is, the DEI agenda. It's like the HRification of America. Like, why are we so okay with so much mediocrity? Well, one thing is we have grade inflation. Well, where's grade inflation coming from? So much of that is we're not able to handle the fact that different people have different amounts of talent, and this manifests in terms of people getting different grades, different test scores, and ultimately working in different jobs. And where have we seen this? Who's been most affected by this? Well, we know from the Harvard admissions lawsuit that went to the Supreme Court that probably the people who get discriminated against the most, we have a lot of East Asians, and we just have ordinary, like nerdy white guys from Iowa or wherever who like engineering. Those people get massively discriminated against by colleges, by employers, by government for that matter. And so the DEI agenda, the same thing that says we have to have tons of immigration and we have to think, that basically is going to vilify the historical population of America. That's the same ideology that's saying we need race-based school admissions, we need race-based hiring, we need to get rid of standardized tests because we don't like what standardized tests tell us. And I think the obvious downstream effect of that is you're getting jaded people who aren't caring as much about success. They aren't getting the message that if I work hard, I will be rewarded, because instead they're being told, if I work hard, I will still just be vilified for who I am. And preferences are going to be given to other people who work less hard, who have less ability because they're a politically favored group. And you can't just suddenly throw out that happens and say, oh, well, no, we broke America's culture, and the only way to fix it is we need to have a bunch of H-1Bs for, my cousins from Bangalore.
Well, I have a little bit of a thought crimey statement to make. I'm going to be careful about how I say this so I don't end up, causing everybody self-harm.
Oh, great.
But it is that I actually think that the hypocrisy in the tweet is that Steve Urkel and Screech are both very American. They're not transplants, and they're not family members of transplants. They're not kids who are here on visa. They're not family members of first generation Americans as far as we can tell. Screech is a very American nerd from Bayside High, and Steve Urkel is, and they're both in love with very similar characters, which was really weird. Both named Lisa. So you have this whole situation. I actually think that by inviting in cultures that are outside of America that are not integrated, you are actually displacing the Screeches and the Urkels of the world. And that's what's causing so much chaos, depression amongst young men. There's and women, high school women, because they don't really have a place. And that's the whole point. And I actually think Nicole Shanahan's tweet that I think you retweeted, Jack, was so pertinent, which is like, hey, we should be really kicking the tires on Americans first who can do these jobs that can go into the STEM categories here. Should we not have the conversation about how many Americans we've displaced from high school and college that could be great engineers that now are not? And then think about the societal effects. And I was saying this, and I won't be as cavalier about saying where I think that this has led to, but I think I'll just say straight up, I think part of the reason why we see so many trans kids and furries in high school and people who are socially displaced now from those friend groups, think about it, in that very Saved by the Bell friend group, if all of a sudden you no longer have a Screech that has a place in that friend group, right? Because you have people who are from various cultures that are now taking those spots because Screech's entire identity was becoming valedictorian. Screech's entire identity was being good at school and being the nerd and doing all those things. That's really problematic from a cultural aspect. When you talk about, we want to return to that. And to go back to Charlie's point, the Gen Xers want to go back to that. The Gen Xers want to think about high school from, Fast Times at Ridgemont High through the time period of Saved by the Bell.
Correct.
That's the American that we want to return to. They want to return to. And part of this is the problem culturally. It's not just the fact that they're taking jobs. They're taking culture that seeps all the way down into the very element. That's what's so hypocritical about this entire thing that I think is kind of, I don't know. I want to say hypocritical. I don't think it was trying to be hypocritical. I think it's more of a curious point to this, is that those are Americans. Those are American friend groups that are being destroyed. Those are American lessons and classes and identities that are being destroyed in this process. And it really should be looked at.
So Blake, let me ask you this, and we only have about 20 minutes to wrap this up. Before I do, and I'm cool staying on this one topic, guys, because it's so rich. Just want to tell you guys about the Rumble Cloud. Are you tired of getting a surprise when you see your cloud services bill each month? Well, our friends at Rumble have done it again. The new Rumble Cloud services are coming this spring. Rumble has built the cloud for the parallel economy. The disruptive Rumble Cloud pricing model will blow away the big tech clouds with big savings and more predictable budgeting. And like Rumble Video, you don't have to worry about cancellation on Rumble Cloud. Remember what happened to Parler? Exclusively for friends of Rumble, sign up today at friends.rumble.cloud and receive 30% off the first 3 months of your cloud compute subscription. Go to friends.rumble.cloud and sign up today. I remember I had to tell you something. Look at your chat. I got to text you something. Blake, you and I both are friends with some of these tech bros, of which are very good people. Can you explain to our audience, though, that their insistence on the H-1B, how passionate they are for it, and what is behind that?
Well, so part of it is, I think there's different universes of H-1B, and you think about where they come from in tech. Some of these guys are very wealthy. They're a part of a literal global elite. And I think once you get high up enough into that sphere, you are a little detached from the life ordinary people live. Like Elon Musk, super talented person, has built some enormously successful things. But if you get down into the brass tacks of it, you could say Elon Musk is almost homeless. Like, does he even have a community that he lives in where he would have to reckon with the practical implications of extremely high levels of immigration from any place to it? Elon Musk is a guy where he gets fed up with California and he'll just leave and he'll go to Texas and then he can go anywhere else he wants. He can basically be a true nomad. But ordinary people aren't like that, and also just a lot of H-1B isn't like that. I've seen some interesting numbers. Like if you look at it, there's H-1Bs that are for U.S. tech companies like Google, Facebook, Oracle, but then you can also look at what are the other companies that are getting it. We've had, if you look at H-1B sponsors from 2013 to 2023, and you look at everywhere outside California, the number one sponsor is Infosys. They have almost 36,000 approved H-1B visas. What is Infosys? Infosys is not SpaceX. It's not Tesla. It's not some advanced cutting edge medical research firm. It's an IT company. Infosys is an IT company, and they're based in India while we're at it. And they've had 36,000 H-1B visas approved for the US. And I believe like a majority of their overall employees in the US are just Indian H-1B visas. So do we really not have the ability to fill IT jobs in the US?
Blake, is there enough brain power to be able to staff our AI Manhattan Project domestically without having to go to foreign workers? Because they say no. The tech bros say there's not enough American brain power.
Well, like I said, I think you could unleash a lot of America's brain power if you got rid of the stuff we actively do to sabotage us. We borderline use the DOJ and its civil rights division to make it illegal to focus entirely on merit in America. We actively egg on our companies and our schools and our government to not hire based on merit. We encourage them to have de facto, not public, but de facto quota systems based on race, based on sex, based on who knows what. I mean, we literally had the Department of Justice sued SpaceX for not hiring enough refugees, even though as a military contractor, they're really not supposed to hire non-US citizens in the first place, but they're getting sued for not having enough refugees at SpaceX. And if we were just to say we should have a meritocratic revolution in America, throw out the HR parasites, throw out the DEI parasites, throw out that whole apparatus and say, you're allowed to hire who you want to do the things you want to do, and you don't have some BS quota to hit, I think you will suddenly find there is a huge amount of talent in America to go and tap. We went to the moon on a bunch of guys who went to Iowa State University to study aeronautics. All of our early astronauts were just these random dudes from Ohio. A lot of those dudes still exist, and it's probably our most underexploited group of talented people. And to simply say that American culture is so rotten that that can't exist, I think is demented. I think we've done a lot of damage to America's culture with what liberals have done, but I think there's a lot we can draw on to revive that. And I don't think the solution is just this, I think Bill Kristol said this, where American culture is just so bad, we just need to import the people from abroad with better cultures. I think American culture has a pretty great legacy of success that we can draw on to revive our country, make it great again.